Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Jay Saki Movie Talks show, where I talk about movies. Except tonight, I'm going to talk about a book. So I just read, or just finished reading over the course of a week, George Orwell's Animal Farm. I realized that in the last few years I had, read George Orwell's Homage to Catalonia in 1984. And having read those, I developed a very specific appreciation of George Orwell, and I figured, I should really go back and reread Animal Farm because even though I want to say, oh, I read that and I love it, I have not read the book since high school. And I bet most of you listening have not read the book since high school. And so I went in with the hypothesis that it was going to be very different reading it through adult eyes. Um, and I might notice more things and develop new opinions. And boy, was I right. The book was very, very different. Very much so the same, but also very different. So, for those who don't know, the book is about a farm in England where the animals rebel against the oppressive farmer, Farmer Jones, throw him off the farm, and they set up a new farm run by the animals. And it's supposed to be a new paradise for themselves. And they go by the rules of animalism, 7 principles for how animals are meant to behave. And although the animals set up a paradise of sorts at first, or I would say that things seem to be going pretty well, the pigs on the farm take charge and they run the farm into a dystopian nightmare, if you will, where oppression of the animals comes back and returns, and what could have been a paradise falls apart. That's the basic gist of the book. But I'm sure most of you have read the book listening to this and you know more than that. So I remember, if you ask anyone, what's Animal Farm about? Everyone will say, oh, well, it's about communism. And I say, okay, what about communism? What about specifically? I imagine people I think the book's anti communist? Maybe? Maybe it's just a metaphor for the Soviet Union? Is the book anti communist? I don't know. See, if someone said the book was anti communist, I would not know for sure if that's true, having just read it. Because if the whole book is a metaphor for communism, it seems to be about how everything is nice and wonderful, and it's only human corruption that ruins everything. So in the book, you have there's a few interesting things here. The animals talk about the rebellion. When are they going to rebel, and do they have to plan on the rebellion? And it says that in the book that the rebellion happens very, very quickly and suddenly, where the farmer comes in to beat one of the animals, and then the animals slowly start to turn on him and start kicking the farmer, and then they chase the farmer out of the barn and off the property. And it was all unexpected. Like, wow, that just suddenly happened. And it occurred to me that that seems to fit in with the Marxist view of rebellions, which is it's not, Karl Marx and others would say it's not a bunch of bad people meeting at night and discussing how to overthrow the government. It's just a natural rebellion that happens because when people get oppressed enough, they rebel. Any bad and suffering that comes from the rebellion, it is what it is. It's what happened. So the book kind of seemed to fit in with the Marxist view in that matter. And in the book, okay, so there are these 7 principles of animalism. I don't have the book in front of me, but it's basically, no animal shall kill another animal, don't wear human clothing, and a few other things to establishing, an animal paradise. Then as the book goes on, the rules, the 7 principles get changed. They get rewritten to be something else. Be something that the animalism is not supposed to be. So if animalism is supposed to be a metaphor for communism in the book, it seems to be saying that communism is not actually a bad thing. It's saying, oh, the original principles are fine, but it's when you rewrite them that everything goes bad. Which I don't agree with. I think original principles of communism cause communist countries to devour themselves. I think, and the more I think about it, it really doesn't make sense to me that you'd write this book and say it's about communism or even a metaphor for the Soviet Union and make it about this near paradise that almost happens and that ends up going badly due to human corruption, if you will. Like, would it make sense if I wrote a book about a bunch of animals rebelling on a farm? and to set up a paradise that fails, and say, well, yeah, it's a metaphor for Nazi Germany. You know? Because the Nazis, they almost had it right, and darn if it wasn't for human corruption that caused Nazi Germany to implode in on itself. That's all it was. People would say I was crazy. So while reading Animal Farm, I'm like, Orwell, are you nuts? Now, having read Homage to Catalonia, I know George Orwell thoroughly despised the Soviet Union. Or at least he despised what it became. I have no idea about his sympathies or views on the Soviet Union beforehand. Did George Orwell see the communist revolution in Russia to be a good thing? I don't know. I mean, that is to say, did he see it to be a good thing at first? I thought the character writing was kind of neat because there's a lot of modern books that try like really hard to flesh out characters because there's this belief that if you want to write a good book or get people to love it, you gotta write like super complex, fleshed out characters. But in Animal Farm, it very briefly describes like Boxer the horse and Benjamin the donkey, the cynic who's just kind of expecting bad things will happen. And with a few brief sentences, you kind of start to really like these characters, and you have great thoughts on Benjamin the donkey and Boxer the horse, but they're not fleshed out that much. They're very simply written, but you like them. So it actually occurred to me while reading the book, I'm like, okay, if I were to write a book and try to make likable, good characters, I think I would look to Animal Farm and take some pointers from this book if I started writing my own on writing good characters. Oh yeah, here's another thing on the whole communist matter. At the end of the book, okay, the pigs have drink alcohol, they wear clothing, and they've become the new farmers, the new slave masters of the farm. And they invite the other farmers over for like a party and play cards, and the farmers are congratulating the pigs on a job well done, making the farm a productive one. And it's basically at that point it's supposed to be like what is it? Disparity has been achieved. But once again, I'm like, what's the metaphor here? Is it saying that the communists have joined in with the capitalists? Is it supposed to be the fulfillment of communist hypocrisy? Because whenever the Soviet Union, fulfilled its tyranny, it didn't cause anyone to like it anymore. So once again, at the end, when the pigs are all doing business with the other farmers, is it saying, oh no, communism has collapsed and capitalism has taken over again? What's it saying? And the thing is, I know people would say, oh, come on, it's a book, it's a subtle metaphor, it's not about, you don't have to take every part of it so seriously, but George Orwell takes it so seriously. He's constantly dropping hints all throughout the book, the little words and things to describe what's happening. You say, oh, that's attached to this is like that. So at the end, I wish I could ask Orwell, what's going on there? Has communism collapsed and, disparity sunk in? What are you saying, Orwell? With all that being said, I do like the book. It's a very, very, very enjoyable read. I just don't know if it's really saying the things that people think it's saying. And honestly, I would not mind if somebody rewrote the book. Somebody should write a new book, call it The New Animal Farm, and rewrite it so that the 7 original principles of animalism destroy the farm in the end. And I think that would be a much more profitable message for folks to learn from. Have a good night, everyone.